today. We're joined by our friend Evan Levitt behind the LA in a Minute Instagram account and the host of In a Minute with Evan Levitt podcast. Always good to see you. LA in a Minute t-shirt.
Great to be here. Yeah. Thank you very much. LA in a Minute. That's right.
All right, let's start talking about the indigenous people of LA, beginning with the Tongva.
That's right.
What should we know?
So for thousands of years, obviously the people who whose land this is, the indigenous people, were multiple tribes and dozens of villages spanning Los Angeles, but the main tribes were the Tataviam, the Tongva, also known as the Gabrieleño Kiz, and the Chumash. And now these tribes all lived and coexisted in various villages. That is very uncanny when you look at the maps of where the villages were where the major urban and suburban centers of Los Angeles were. And the funny thing is, these villages, the way was paved through footpaths, where now we have freeways and roads and major thoroughfares.
Yeah, because you look behind us, we've got this animation of traffic, and there's a big tie between our freeways. How so?
Absolutely. So, you know, tracing the mountains and the tributaries and the natural contours of the land is, you know, an intuitive way to get around. But there are also, you know, certain shortcuts or better thoroughfares that were developed by these tribes when they were looking for resources. Remember that California has a lot of microclimates, even in the Los Angeles area. So in certain areas you can get pine nuts or acorns, or you find grizzly bears for the hides. And those were ways that, you know, you could introduce trades between the various tribes of the various villages. And one interesting story is when the Portola expedition came to town, and, you know, unfortunately we know how that ended. They were stuck at the Palisades Bluffs, and the native tribes were like, hey, you guys need help getting inland, and they actually showed them what became the Sepulveda Pass. And that's sort of one way that, you know, unfortunately with the tragic end, but those roadways and those main thoroughfares really were pioneered by the indigenous people who were on this land initially.
Yeah. We see a lot of freeway expansions, for better or worse, and so when we see those freeway expansions, more proof is being found, huh?
So almost every time there's a freeway expansion or lane widening, anything like that, you'll see that they need to halt construction or halt the development because they're finding, whether it's shards of pottery or full vessels or things of that nature, that sort of show along those paths. Those were the main thoroughfares for the indigenous people to you know, induce their trade, and also it was important for them to develop relationships between the tribes, because they really actually condoned and saw that intermarriage between the tribes was good for tribal relationships. So it was a very big back and forth that took place on what became our, you know, day-to-day rush hour thoroughfares.
And just to wrap things up, what do you think is the most important thing that we should know about the indigenous people in Los Angeles?
Oh, man. I mean, that this is their land and that they were here first, and how important they are to the history of Los Angeles. And we are trying to acknowledge and recognize that every day, especially a day like Indigenous Peoples Day.
You know, the LA County Board of Supervisors, each board meeting, they held their weekly board meetings on Tuesday, and they opened, since Janice Hahn became chair, they opened with a land acknowledgement.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
and that's, thank you for teaching me something.
Yeah, there you go. You can add that to your podcast.
There you go. Absolutely.
All right, follow more. To learn more, you can follow along LA in a Minute on Instagram, or subscribe to the In a Minute with Evan Levitt podcast. This week's episode, the songs that define Los Angeles. I've been seeing that on your socials.
We're guessing I Love LA, is that one of them?
That gets an asterisk. So you got to tune in for the top 5. Absolutely. It's a good list.
There's Eazy-E.
He's mentioned. He's not on the top 5 either, but he's, hey,
oh my God.
very,
I am
very inclusive.
On behalf of Randy Newman. It's an anthem.
He gets the special asterisk at the end after #1. The episode could not be complete without I Love LA and Randy
Maybe
Newman.
we'll talk about this next Monday when you're back.
This is a debate.
We'll be right back.
Yeah, we should do a whole segment just on that.
Yeah.